starts recording, we don't want it.
To help my child to maintain the home language as well as the cultural heritage. And I believe that the challenges that I have been facing is not unfamiliar to a lot of immigrant, minority immigrant families out there who are trying to raise bilingual children in a context where their home language may not have the same prestige, social power, and capital value as the majority language. And it is very well documented that despite parents' effort to foster heritage language development in the home, children, generally speaking, prefer the majority language as they grow up, as they start schooling and start socializing outside of the home. And in many cases, they may even resist the learning of the heritage language, leading to language shift and language loss, right, over time and in future generations. And it's very sad. It's really sad, right? Excuse me. We know that language loss may happen at the community level within 3 generations. And the loss of the heritage language is often observed among 2nd generation children of immigrant parents. And given the important role played by heritage language in cultural transmission, in family cohesion, as well as in the child's overall well-being development, we can see the critical implications that such a language loss has for individuals, for society, and for families. And also the importance of the field of research in language maintenance. Right, so from the inceptions, research in language maintenance has highlighted the need to support minority and immigrant languages. And to date, there has been substantial body of research into parents' attitudes towards heritage language maintenance and the strategies that parents employ in order to help their children to maintain the home language. Especially in the past decade or so, heritage language maintenance has been increasingly addressed within the framework of family language policy, which is an emergent field of inquiry that brings together language policy and child language acquisition in order to examine language planning and uses in multilingual homes and their impact on child multilingual development. Now, the terms family language policy here is used to refer to the decisions in relation to language choice and uses in the home domain. And this decision can be explicit and overt or implicit and covert. And previous studies have shown that, in fact, much of family language policy is implicit, unarticulated, fluid, and negotiated moment to moment in family interaction. There's 3 components of family language policy: ideologies, that is beliefs regarding language use, language learning, and language maintenance in the home context. Language practices, which is the actual use of languages by individual family members, and language management, meaning the language planning activities, excuse me, the language planning activities that parents employ to help maintain the home language. Among the 3 components, language ideologies are said to be the driving forces for language practices and management. Excuse me. So when parents highly value the home language and believe it is crucial for their children to maintain it, for example, they will provide necessary linguistic environments and facilities to make this happen. For example, they may enforce the heritage language only policy in the home, take time out to directly teach their children the language of the home and literacy, enroll them in heritage language school. The reverse is also true. If parents see their home language as a barrier to their children's participation in mainstream education and mainstream society, they may choose to lose their home language in order to support the child's development of the majority language. Now, researchers in the field of language, family language policy also contend that Thank you so much. Heritage language maintenance and development are not merely private family matters, but they are related to external forces as well. For example, at the micro level, decisions about language, what language to learn, what language to use, to maintain or to lose, can be influenced by factors like the emotional and identity needs of individual family members. Parents' impact beliefs. These are the beliefs that parents hold regarding their responsibility to raise bilingual children. And these beliefs are largely shaped by their educational backgrounds, as well as other life experiences, such as migration experiences. And they are often reflected in their goals for their children's linguistic and educational development, and are said to be one of the most important factors because they can directly influence parents' involvement in heritage language maintenance. Child's agency. Children have been found to play a major part in shaping the family language policy as well. For example, they may set rules about what language to speak in family interaction and request their parents to comply with their language choice as well. So in other words, children are not passive recipients of parents' ideologies, but they can also directly contribute to shaping the family language ecology. At the macro level, family language policy can be influenced by the relative status of the home language in relation to the majority language. For example, the high status of the home language can motivate parents to maintain it. Excuse me. In contrast, the low status of the heritage language may lead families to sacrifice their own language for the sake of developing children's proficiency in the majority language. So we can see that the survival of a language depends very much on how it is valued culturally and economically in the society. Public education policy, especially policy regarding language in education, is also a critical factor. So when the home language is not the language of instruction in the school system, parents may have lower expectation for their children's proficiency in the home language and may also provide less support for literacy development in the home language. So to sum up, we can see that by linking language choice and language use in the home with broader social processes, as well as to the specific life experiences of family members, the field of language, family language policy can help us to answer very important questions, such as why some children become bilingual, multilingual, but others remain monolingual. Why some families succeed in maintaining their home language, but others lose it, right? And what can be done at the various levels, societal level, families level, and individuals level, in order to maintain the home language. So the project that I'm presenting here is a longitudinal study of 5 Vietnamese immigrant families in Singapore, not including my own family, because I started it when my child is already old. Okay, I'm interested in the role of the parents' language ideologies in the maintenance of their home language, Vietnamese. And especially I'm interested in the parents' beliefs and attitudes towards the heritage language and heritage language maintenance, especially in relation to the dominant languages of the society, mainly English. And also what their language practices at home are, especially regarding the heritage language use. How do they negotiate heritage language use in parent-child interaction? Now, to date, most research on heritage language maintenance in the Vietnamese diaspora focuses on monolingual contexts, such as USA, and more increasingly recently in Australia and the UK. And there's very limited knowledge about how Vietnamese family navigate their home languages or their home language and the dominant languages probably in the multilingual context where different official languages coexist. And compared to the large community of Vietnamese speakers in the USA, UK, Australia, the community of Vietnamese speakers in Singapore is quite small, right? That means not only the presence of the Vietnamese language, but also its social utility and economic values are considerably outweighed by the dominant languages of the Singaporean society. So it would be interesting to see, how these factors play out in the home language practices. So a bit on the research context. As you may have already known, Singapore is a multi-ethnic society with the majority of the population of Chinese origin. Other major ethnic groups are Malays and Indians, and Vietnamese only represent a minority community amongst other minority ethnicities. There are 4 official languages in Singapore: English, Chinese Mandarin, Malay, and Tamil. And here is a sign from the train station in Singapore. So it's very easy to find, signs in public places to be written in multiple languages. Like in this example, you can see all 4 official languages, right, are used in the sign. English is the most spoken home language in Singaporean family, followed by Mandarin Chinese, other Chinese dialects, and Malay. And only a small part of the population speaks Tamil and other languages and dialects. Now, the bilingual education policy in Singapore requires children to learn 2 languages, English and one of the official languages, that is Chinese or Malay or Tamil. And of this, English is the medium of instruction at all educational levels, and the other official language is only taught as a second language. So we can see that among the 4 official languages, English is the most important language, right, for people in Singapore. A high level of English competence, needless to say, can lead to more job opportunities and better socio-economic gains. So consequently, in recent studies, we have found gradual shift from ethnic languages to English among young people. So we can see that the loss of the ethnic languages in this multilingual society is becoming a real problem, a real issue. Right. So the families, the participating families in my studies had preschool children, right, aged between 2 and 5, Evan 4 years and 5 months, Andy 3, Charlotte 2 years and 10 months, Karen 2 years and 10 months too, and Vivian 3 years and 9 months. 4 out of 5 children were born in Singapore, and 1 arrived as an infant. All the children attended bilingual early education program where they received exposure to both English and Chinese. In all 5 families, the parents were highly educated professionals in their 30s and 40s. So you can see that most of them have a postgraduate degree. They were fluent English users, but of course, they were native speakers of Vietnamese. And all the families had been living in Singapore for at least 5 years. None of the families lived with grandparents, right? Although grandparents may visit them from time to time, and every time they visited, they can stay up to 1 month. And one family also had a live-in domestic helper from the Philippines, Evan's family. In all families, the parents reported using both Vietnamese and English, but with varying frequencies. In Evan's family, because of the presence of the Philippine helper, so English was used as a lingua franca, right, in the home, and Vietnamese was only used privately between the parents or between the parents and the children when the helper was not around. So Evan was reported to speak mainly English at home. For the remaining families, Vietnamese was the main language spoken at home, but the children were able to flexibly code switch between 2 languages. And in 2 families, the parents reported that they fear that their children started to shift to English more now. Okay, I collected both interview data and interactional data. And interactional data consisted of 24 hours of audio recorded naturally occurring family talk from each family. So totally, I have 120 hours of recording. The recording were made every month on a fortnightly basis for 12 months. And it was done during together time in the families, for example, meal times, play times, reading times, bed times. At the end of the study, the mothers were also interviewed about the history of the child's language development, the parents' stated language policy, expected outcomes of the children's language development, as well as the strategies that they employed to manage languages at home and to maintain the heritage language. Right, so let's come to my first research question, right? So the first research question asks, what beliefs and attitudes parents hold towards the heritage language and heritage language maintenance? And this is what I found. 4 major themes occurred in the interview data. Firstly, all the 5 families highlighted that Vietnamese was not only part of their heritage and cultural identity that needed to be passed on to their children, but also an essential tool for communication and maintaining close relationships with other family members, hence contributing to the children's overall well-being development. Karen's mother, for example, considered it vital for her children to master the heritage language because she found it unnatural for them to speak English to one another. So she said, we can't imagine speaking to our own children in a foreign language. So English is a foreign language, especially that's impossible for the grandparents and relatives. It's very awkward if when they return, people speak Vietnamese to them and they respond in English. Andy's mother also emphasized the role of the mother tongue in expressing emotion, hence viewing heritage language as the key to building meaningful relationships with other members of the heritage culture. And she said, we are Vietnamese, so identity, right? Even if we can speak another language fluently, when we want to express our deep emotions from the bottom of our heart, we want to express them in our mother tongue. Agreeing with this view, Charlotte's mother hoped the heritage language can help the children maintain strong bonding with their extended family in Vietnam and develop a sense of belonging as a family. So she said, to maintain strong bonding with family in Vietnam so they know that when they encounter difficulties in life, they still have family support in Vietnam. All the 5 families also regarded it an advantage to acquire the heritage language as an additional language, so that it can help expand the children's linguistic repertoires and capabilities. And this point is further clarified by Vivian's mother. I don't have space to put it here, but she said that because of, she said that because the family may decide to return to Vietnam in the future, so she wanted her children to master the language. So here, what she said highlighted not only the cultural values of the language, the communicative function of heritage language, but also the social economic values of the heritage language as well. All right, so regarding the parents' beliefs about heritage language learning, despite the great importance attached to heritage language, none of the families, as you can see, reported expecting the children to achieve native speakers level in the heritage language because of the limited exposure and opportunities for using heritage language outside of the home. The family also tended to have varying expectations regarding children's ultimate proficiency levels. And I found that these are related to their living situation as well as their future plans, especially their migration plans. For example, for Evan, since English was his main language and stronger language, the mother did not rigidly set high expectations regarding heritage language competence at his age. She considered it more important for him to develop effective conversational skills in the heritage language. And she said that reading and writing can be learned at a later stage as a second language. And her view were also shared by Andy's and Charlotte's mother. In contrast, Karen's mother were confident that because heritage language, Vietnamese, was the home language, so her children could attain a reasonably high level, in the heritage language. And she especially took pride in the fact that unlike other children in immigrant parents, Karen and her sister were able to communicate in Vietnamese with their parents and relatives in Vietnam. And she also planned to teach her children reading and writing skills when they grew a bit older. Now, for Vivian's family, because of their living situation, the father and the older sister lived in Vietnam, but the mother and the younger sister lived in Singapore. So the mother said they were quite uncertain of their future. So they might decide to return to Vietnam for family reunion. And because of that, the mother wanted Vivian to master Vietnamese so that she would not be disadvantaged if they go back to Vietnam. And for this reason, although Vivian's mother was aware that Vivian might not reach native speakers level in Vietnamese, she expected Vivian to be at least become effective use of the language. When compared to English, the language of the mainstream society, although none of the families reported using English dominantly at home, they all expressed high goals and expectations regarding the children's English language competence. Andy's mother, for example, stated that she wanted her children to attain native speakers level because of the prestigious status of the language as a global lingua franca, as well as because of its high utility in the Singapore context. So she said, English language learning is of utmost importance because whether you return to Vietnam or live abroad, you still need it because everything now is internationalized. So we study abroad, our work involves communication with people, foreign people. So I think it's really important to learn English. Similarly, Vivian's mother stated that she had higher goals for her children's English language learning as compared to Vietnamese language learning because of the vital role played by English in Singapore context and in the world. So she said, I set higher expectation for her English than Vietnamese skills. Besides communication skill, she will also need to write assignments in English, debate in English, and her English tests are also very demanding. So Vivian's family is the family where the parents, one parent live in Vietnam, one parent and one child live in Vietnam, and where they're very uncertain about their future plans, and they, plan to go back to Vietnam. And even in these families, right, the mother still set a higher goal for English language learning as compared to the heritage language learning. Given the political power and economic value of the English language in the local as well as the global context, these findings are not surprising. And in fact, echo previous studies which demonstrate how the broader societal attitudes and ideologies are reproduced at the family's level. At times, the unequal status between the heritage language and the majority language may also create ideological tensions for the families. For example, in Evan's family, despite that both parents agreed on the higher status of the English language, the parents shared really conflicting views on how the children should acquire the language. So Vivian's mother, for example, said that she believed that because the children grow up in Singapore, their education is done in English, so they will just acquire the language naturally. She has no concerns about their, ultimate proficiency in the language. And she doesn't feel that she needs to teach English at home. However, the father, right, had a very different view. The father believed in the need to give their children a head start in English language competence so that they could be best prepared for schooling and social interaction beyond the home context. So he deliberately chose to speak English to the children. So Evan's mother shared, in the past, Dad only spoke Vietnamese. But then when he took Evan out to play with other kids in the playground, he saw that when people spoke to Evan, he didn't understand. So Dad became worried that Evan might be disadvantaged when he started schooling. So Dad began to switch to English. So Similarly, although expressing no concerns about their children's English acquisition, other parents reported investing time and also resources to ensure children's progress in English. Vivian's mother reported teaching English at home and spending time helping her to do homework. And Karen's parents also enrolled her in speech and drama, enrichment classes in order to improve their confidence in speaking English. So once again, the findings here seem to suggest that while the parents hold strong beliefs in the cultural functions and instrumental value of the heritage language, the need for their children to become effective users in the heritage language because of the strong links to the home country. Their goals for children's language development might still be heavily influenced by the overriding weight of the higher social prestige and higher economic values of the English language. And in fact, even for the case of Vivian's family, who may return to live and work in Vietnam in the future, the mother also indicated that as much as she wanted to teach Vivian how to read and to write in Vietnamese, they needed to prioritize schoolwork, meaning that the heritage language is only a second priority compared to the majority language. Right. So when asked about their family language policy, it has been found that despite their overall enthusiasm for their children to learn the heritage language, to speak the heritage language, none of the families reported implementing a strict heritage language only policy at home. Charlotte's mother, for example, said that the family set no strict rules about language choice and use, but let things happen naturally. Sharing this viewpoint, Andy's mother added that although eventually she would want her children to form the habits of speaking Vietnamese at home and when communicating with other Vietnamese speakers, she did not want to force them to speak Vietnamese at all costs. Right? Instead, she wanted to nurture their love for the heritage language, which she believed could lead to increased use of the heritage language. So she said, I don't want to be that strict. I don't want to force him to shift to my language. It must come naturally. I must make him love the Vietnamese language and not scare him away. In addition, all the families demonstrated full support for bilingualism and high acceptance of code-switching behavior by the children, a finding that is in line with previous research on transnational families. In the interview, 4 out of 5 families reported allowing their children to tap on their bilingual repertoire to increase the effectiveness of their communication. And to explain their acceptance, their high acceptance of bilingualism, Charlotte's mother said that it would be unrealistic to expect bilinguals not to use both languages. So she said, oh no, I don't have it here, sorry. Evan's mother also considered code switching a very natural part of bilingualism and believed that children would soon sort out the right language for the right context of communication. So this is what Evan's mother said. It was natural for them to mix the languages, but now they could tell the differences. He would initiate in English, but depending on context. If I speak Vietnamese, he would shift to Vietnamese too. So in general, the parents' openness to and appreciation of bilingualism might largely be explained by their experiences with multilingualism and transnationalism. Now, in the super diverse context of Singapore, multilingualism is a natural part of everyone's life. So it's very easy to understand why the families in my study hold a positive attitudes to their children's bilingualism. And also because being bilinguals themselves, being transnational migrants who have benefited from their bilingual backgrounds, it's easy for them to recognize and to become appreciative of the benefits associated with bilingualism in terms of education, employment opportunities, and social economic advancement. And they can see it as a valuable assets for their children to acquire in today's globalized world. Right. So I'll come to my second research questions. which is about language practices in the home. I wonder, what parents do when children speak the majority language. Do they help them? How do they help them negotiate language use in interactions? So for this purpose, I look at the conversational data and identify language negotiation sequence in the conversational exchanges between parents and children. Now, following our 1984, a language negotiation sequence is defined as a sequence that begins with the use of the majority language by the child, which is treated as inappropriate, contextually inappropriate by the parents, and leads up to the parents' request for the child to shift to the heritage language, followed by the child's compliance or non-compliance, and ends when one of them yields to the other's preferred language. And I could identify a total of 244 sequences. Let me give you an example of a negotiation sequence. This conversational exchange comes from Evan's family, and the context is book reading.
I want a full story.
Tiếng Việt, mẹ đang nói tiếng Việt mà nãy giờ hay nói tiếng Anh. Tiếng Việt. Con quên ạ. Con là mẹ ơi.
But I don't know how to speak in Vietnamese, that kind of word.
What word?
All right. So, I mean, the sequence is quite long. Maybe I just let you listen to the second part. I have to split it into two parts because it can't fit within one slide.
Từ nào con không biết con hỏi mẹ. Con bảo, mẹ ơi, từ này tiếng Việt nói như thế nào? Mẹ chỉ cho con. Từ nào con không biết.
Mommy, can you buy me a full story without any words? But then got the word down underneath the wheels. A very long book. A very long book.
Right. Okay. Okay, let's just go back to this. Right. Yeah, so prior to this sequence, Evan and his brother were talking to each other in English, despite mom's several reminders for them to switch to Vietnamese. And in line 1, Evan turns to mom and asks in English whether she can buy him a longer storybook. So here the sequence begins. Mom does not respond to his request, okay? But instead, she issues a demand for Vietnamese in line 2. Vietnamese, I'm speaking in Vietnamese, right? She further produces a complaint in line 3. You have been speaking in English this whole time. And here, mom's also indicates that, so mom's complaints and requests here indicate her lack of acceptance, her disapproval of Evan's use of English in this context. Evan, however, reproduces his request in English in line 4. Mommy, can you buy me a story book? Right. So, resisting the mom's demands. Before Evan completes his turn in line 4, mom enters his turn space and reissues her demand in line 5, Vietnamese. This interruption signals her strong stance against the child's choice of English and her clear non-linguistic alignment with him. After a pause showing lack of uptake from Evan in line 6, mom provides an account for Evan's failure to comply with her good choice in line 7. That is blaming on a lapse of behavior. Now, in doing so, she's giving the child an opportunity to correct his behavior, right? And then she initiates the Vietnamese repetition routine in line 9 with the formula, you say, mommy. Evans repeats the vocative part of the formula, mommy, but then cuts off the final sound of the vocative and abandons the projected course of actions. He switches to English and gives an account for his failure to comply with mom's request for heritage language in line 10 and 11. I don't know how to, I don't know how to speak in Vietnamese, that kind of word. Right? And then in line 13, in response to Evan's failure to switch to Vietnamese, mom's first responds in English in line 13 by asking him what word he doesn't know. thus accepting his account and canceling the repetition sequences.
Từ nào có nghĩa là
In line 15, Mom switches back to Vietnamese with offer to provide Evans with the input he needs. And the child's resistance to this agenda can be seen in the fact that he repeats the request in English before Mom could complete her turn. Mom models how Evan can request for help by using the formula, you say mommy, right, in line 17. But Evan resists again with refusal in English in line 20, no. Mom continues with her instruction in Vietnamese in line 22, which word you don't know. But Evan doesn't uptake Mom's request and instruction, and instead he expands on his request by describing the book he wants in line 26 to line 28. And Mom continues in Vietnamese to display her non-understanding of his English utterance, thus avoiding a response to the request. And the sequence closes when Mom turns down his request to buy him a book and turns to attend the younger brother. Right? So this is one example of a language negotiation sequence. Now, what I found is, in conversation with the parents, when the child produces an utterance in English, the parents routinely request him or her to switch back to Vietnamese. And they can use 4 major patterns of interactional resources to do so. Firstly, they may continue to speak Vietnamese in the subsequent turn, hence implicitly signaling their disapproval of the child's choice of English. Or they may also reformulate the child's utterance into Vietnamese, with or without expanding the sequence to teach Vietnamese linguistic items. They may also temporarily suspend the ongoing conversation and teach Vietnamese linguistic items in an explicit manner. And then finally, they may also issue explicit directives for the children to switch to Vietnamese. And they may do so with or without modeling the language for the child. Now, analysis of the child's responses show that he or she interpreted the parent's action as request for heritage language use. However, the child did not always comply or immediately comply with the request, which can lead to extended trajectories of exchanges that sometimes end with the parents giving in to the children's language choice. So 3 patterns of responses from the children: immediate compliance, very rare, initial resistance, but subsequent compliance, non-compliance, persistent resistance, which leads parents to give up on trying. Right. So looking at the distribution of the negotiation strategies, it is found that despite some variation, the parents tended to rely mainly on indirect strategies, such as continuing to speak Vietnamese, to signal their preferred code, and reformulations to correct the child's language choice. In comparison, more overt strategies such as direct teaching and explicit requests for language shift were much less often used. Now, the findings seem to confirm the interview data, which shows that the parents have quite relaxed attitudes towards children's use of English in the home. On the one hand, the findings suggest that the parents really respect the children's language choice and bilingual identity. But we wonder how useful some of these practices would be for the children's heritage language development. I would argue that implicit signal of disapproval of the child's language choice alone might not be useful, especially when the children have not had sufficient linguistic repertoire in the heritage language to express themselves. Similarly, insistence on heritage language use while indicating the parents' strong commitment to heritage language maintenance might not help solve the children's linguistic difficulties if not accompanied with provisions of heritage language materials, as we have seen in the conversational exchange between Evan and his mother in the first excerpt. Right? So he doesn't seem cooperative when she just issued a demand, speak Vietnamese, without teaching him how to do it. So presumably, when children experience linguistic difficulties and struggle to convey their messages using the heritage language, providing heritage language materials and models through reformulations or direct teaching might be more helpful, as we see in the next excerpt. Thank you.
Và nó sẽ bị diệt chủng, nó sẽ không còn loài cá mập nữa. Cho nếu mà người ta mà cứ làm cho cá mập, nếu mà lượng cá mập mà chết nhiều hơn là những con cá mập con có thể ra đời thì là cá mập sẽ có nguy cơ bị tuyệt chủng.
Dinosaurs already extinct.
Đúng rồi, hay giỏi quá. Con bảo mẹ ơi.
Mẹ ơi.
Right. It's very long, so I cut it into two parts as well. So this is the second part.
Khủng long bị tuyệt chủng, loài khủng long đã bị tuyệt chủng đúng không?
Khủng long bị tuyệt chủng.
Thế con biết tại sao khủng long bị tuyệt chủng không?
Con biết. Mình mà ở đây và khủng long chua chết thì là khủng long sẽ ăn mình mất.
Nhưng mà có loại khủng long chỉ ăn cỏ không nào?
Right. Okay, let's just go back to the previous slide. So prior to this sequence, Mom asked Evan to read one last page about sharks before they go to bed. And Evan cannot read the word extinct, so Mom modeled it for him. In turn one, Evan asked the meaning of the word in English. Extinct meaning what? This is very typical Singaporean English structure, grammatical structure. Okay, so in response, Mom first provides the equivalent word in Vietnamese in line 2, meaning it will be killed, kill species. Evan initiates a repetition of the word in Vietnamese in line 4, killed, right? But yields the floor to Mom's overlapped explanations. In line 5 to line 10, Mom addresses Evan's questions about the meaning of the word extinct in Vietnamese. And by giving him the input in Vietnamese, Mom is modeling how to use the word and also indicating implicitly that the expected code for this conversational exchange is heritage language. However, in line 12, Evan produces a touch of in English. Dinosaurs are already extinct. In Vietnamese and with no delay, Mom positively accept his turn and compliments him on his knowledge. Right? So you are so smart. You are right. That's right, Evan. So smart. And she also initiates a Vietnamese repetition sequence with the directive, "You say, mommy," in line 13. Evan signals his readiness and willingness to participate in the Vietnamese repetition routine in the next turn in line 14. So he says, mommy. So he repeats a vocative in Vietnamese. In line 16, Mom then provides the Vietnamese equivalent of Evan's touch-off turn, dinosaurs are extinct. In response, in line 17, Evan produces the Vietnamese utterance, including a reproduction of the vocative. Mommy, dinosaurs are extinct. After the repetition sequence, Mom's questions in turn 19. So do you know why dinosaurs are extinct? Can do one of the following jobs. It can be used to further the topic, check the child's understanding of the sentence that he just repeats, and provide one more models of the sentence. So in turns 20 to 22, Evan responds to Mom's question in Vietnamese, displaying his understanding of Mom's Vietnamese questions and willingness to use heritage language. So we can see the very different outcomes, right, of the two exchanges between Evan and his mom. He seems more cooperative when the mom provides the heritage language model as shown in this excerpt. In contrast, when mom only insists on speaking Vietnamese, without providing a model. And the contents also come from an English book, as shown in the previous excerpt, in the previous slide. He cannot comply with her request for the heritage language because he doesn't have the linguistic repertoire to do so. So, come to my conclusion. So in this project, I explore the role of parents' language ideologies in the maintenance of the home language among 5 minority immigrant families in a multilingual context. And to this end, I looked at both the interview data and the interactional data. So in other words, I look at the parents' stated language policy and the actual language use in the home context. Now, a consistent theme emerging from the interview data is, despite the importance of the, of the heritage language and heritage language maintenance reported by the parents, their language policy indicates the prioritizations of the majority language, right, English, over the heritage language. This finding echoes previous studies and illustrates the power of external social forces in impacting parents' decision and planning around language choice and language use in the home, and hence children's bilingual development. Compared to the societal language, English, the home language Vietnamese has lower prestige and also lower capital values in the linguistic market. Consequently, the parents generally tend to set lower goals for their children's learning of the home language and adopt a less strict policy regarding Vietnamese language use in the home domain. Now, given that their home language is not supported by the wider society or public policies, and home is the only place where they can learn the heritage language, access their ethnic language and heritage, the parents' practices in this study might compromise the learning opportunities for the children and likely result in language shift over time. And looking at the interactional data, it also becomes very clear that language maintenance is largely dependent not only on the parents' effort to negotiate a heritage language interactional context and to provide heritage language input to scaffold the child's learning, but also on the child's willingness to participate in the parent-initiated language negotiation and teaching. So in other words, language maintenance is not a top-down process of transmitting language from parents to children, but is an interactional achievement involving both parents and children constantly negotiating their language choice and practices within everyday interactions. As such, analysis of actual family discourse are necessary to understand the enactment of language choice and therefore bilingual and multilingual processes and language maintenance in everyday parent-child interactions. Now, recent study in heritage language maintenance have increasingly drawn on micro-analysis of interactional data to examine language practices as embedded in families' mundane activities. And this line of research should be continued in the future. And finally, the insight offered by my project hopefully can also be useful for parents, school, and policymakers in helping minority immigrant children integrate into the mainstream societies and to connect to their ethnic heritage at the same time. At the family's level, this requires parents' consciousness of their own language practices and the impact of these practices on children's heritage language development. At the school and wider societal level, this requires recognition of the value of the heritage language in the children's overall development, as well as understanding of the challenges that minority immigrant families face in maintaining their home language, as well as support at the institutional level in terms of policies and in terms of resources as well. And without all this awareness and measures and concerted efforts, positive results in heritage language maintenance is unlikely to be achieved. So with that, I conclude my presentation. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Not only academically, but also I think many of you have experiences and doesn't have a little bit personal level, I certainly do. So we have a few minutes for questions. I'm not sure, we have a microphone there, so if somebody would like to get some more information on it.
Obviously, your move to New Zealand has changed the possibility of continuing with those families, and I wondered whether you have any plans to kind of note what happens later, because we all know that, you know, the moment of threat it looms as education arrives.
Right, yeah. So yeah, thank you very much for your question. I mean, thank you very much for bearing with me, you know, throughout the presentations. I mean, I have completed the project, and I've just only recently completed the data analysis. I haven't written anything on this project. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of difficult to follow up with the families. Now, in fact, one of the families in this study has just moved to Wellington. Right. I mean, the families in my project represent what we call transnational families. So they're highly mobile. You know, they move all around the world. So yeah, but I mean, since I'm here, I really hope that I can do something with immigrant families in this context. You know, perhaps starting from my own family, perhaps. Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. Really, really interesting presentation, thank you. I've got a page of notes here, but I won't read through them. My sort of question is about taking us from where we are with very broad-based, high-level strategic statements in the education sector and moving us actually into more actionable outcomes that are going to have real effects on families and learners. So just one example is the recent National Education and Learning Priorities statement that came into effect about 2 weeks ago. And that states that a priority for the education system is to have high aspirations for every learner and support these by partnering with their whānau and communities to design and deliver education that responds to their needs and sustains their identities, their languages and their cultures. From what I've seen, in my perspective in New Zealand, we're very, very good with these high-level statements. But what we don't really see is actionable policy outcomes being carried out. One of my favourite statements from the Education Review Office was that we have strategies, policies and practices to address learners' priorities, but these vary across jurisdictions. So what would you like to see happen on a national level, actions from the Crown that will really result in differences for families and learners?
That's a very big question. I'm afraid I don't really have the answer to that question. But I mean, like nowadays, I mean, research has increasingly emphasized trans-languaging practices in education, you know, allow children to tap on their bilingual repertoire in order to, you know, learn the best. At the practical level, I don't know how that might be possible if the teachers themselves do not know the languages of the children, right? Yeah, so I mean, just looking at I mean, for me, I'm more, I think what is more manageable is just to look at the micro level, you know, I mean, what is really happening in family interaction, for example, and perhaps raise parents' awareness of their own language practices, and perhaps we start from there to impact impact changes from there. But at the national level, I really don't have an answer for that. Sorry.